Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the Home After Harm Family webinar. We are so happy that you could all join us today. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the comments and share a little bit about why you're here today to connect with one another as the webinar continues. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Jasmine and I am the legal assistant for the Home After Harm team at Salinas Valley State Prison. Today I am joined by various team members from both the Lancaster and Salinas Valley Home After Harm teams. You will get to meet them as the presentation goes. Before we start, I just want to review the agenda for us today. First, we'll have Keith, our executive director, provide some background information on what type of work we do at Uncommon Law. Then we'll explain the purpose of today's webinar, and then he'll give a brief overview of the parole process. Following that, we'll dive into an overview of our program, Home After Harm. And then finally, we'll offer some advice on how you can support your loved one through both the parole process and the Home After Harm program. So let's get started. Keith, over to you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Good evening, everyone. As Jasmine said, I'm the executive director here at Uncommon Law, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity to connect with you all tonight. At Uncommon Law, we provide what we consider trauma-informed counseling and legal representation and policy advocacy, all of which is aimed at bringing people home from life sentences. That's all we do. And one of the newer ways that we do that work is through the Home After Harm program, which it combines weekly group sessions that are led by people who've done the work to transform their own lives and come home from life sentences. And they partner with our legal team, which provides monthly legal workshops to help translate that weekly work into a language the parole board can understand. And we're all here tonight because you all are the families and loved ones of some of the participants in our Home After Harm program. And our fearless coordinator and legal assistant, Jasmine, has been working really hard to get us all together to help demystify the parole process for you, to help you understand what this Home After Harm program is, and also to invite you to partner with us in supporting your loved ones who are in this work. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all when your loved ones graduate from the program in the spring. I'll talk now a little bit about the parole process itself. And we got some slides that help to take some of the mystery out. And the first question, of course, is what is a parole hearing? What are we even talking about? And most people in California who are sentenced to prison don't have to go to a parole hearing in order to be released. They're automatically released after they served a certain period of time, a fixed period of time. But a lot of people, about a third, are serving a type of life sentence. And then quite a few other people have the type of sentence that lets them be considered for parole release before they've served their whole sentence. So I'll talk a little bit about what that means. The parole hearing itself is conducted by the parole board here in California. It's called the Board of Parole Hearings, or the board for short. And they decide whether a parole eligible person should be released from prison. And there are a couple different categories of people that they're looking at, whose cases they review. And that could be people who are serving a life sentence of 7 or 15 or 25 years to life. And they go before the parole board to be considered. Also, people who are serving those kind of sentences or a much longer determinate or fixed sentence. It could be 50 years, it could be 70 years, it could be 120 years. But if they committed the offense prior to turning 26 years old, then they become eligible for what's called a youth parole hearing. So they get to go to the parole board. And then there's another category of people who are at least 50 years old and have served at least 20 years in prison. They get a special kind of hearing. They call it an elderly parole hearing. There are a couple other kinds of hearings, but those are the main ones that our program participants find themselves facing. And what are they doing at the hearing? What is the board deciding? The main question they're trying to answer is whether the person they are considering, whether they present right now, today, an unreasonable risk to public safety. And the people making that decision are parole commissioners. So there's a commissioner who's appointed by the governor, and there's a deputy commissioner who also works for the parole board. And they get to consider what they call relevant and reliable information. So that can come in a lot of different forms, a lot of different documents, testimony from the person who's being considered for parole, and they're asking these questions all to help them decide whether the person presents an unreasonable risk to public safety. Many people want to know, well, can I, as a family member, attend the parole hearing? No, you cannot, unless you are also a family member or a representative of the person who was a victim in the crime. And sometimes that happens. We know that happens. So that's the only time that family members of the parole candidate also get to attend the parole hearing. But you can always write letters to the parole board expressing your support and why the person should be released. And if someone is not granted parole, meaning if the board finds you do currently present an unreasonable risk to public safety, they can put off the next hearing up to 15 years. It could be 3 years, it could be 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, or 15 years. And it gets a little bit interesting because each of those timeframes can be shortened a little bit, but not all the way. But it could be, it's important to keep in mind that they could put off another hearing up to 10 or 15 years. And they do sometimes do that. And who is on the board? The commissioners, there are 21 of them. Most of them have some background in law enforcement. And that can include prisons, that can include being police chiefs, sheriffs. Sometimes they are former prison wardens. Sometimes they're former prosecutors. And most of them have spent their careers locking people up, basically. And they're the ones who now decide whether our folks get to come home, which not the most balanced and unbiased group of people, but that's what we have to deal with right now. And how does someone prepare for the hearing? Well, there's a lot, and this is what a lot of this program is about, because the parole board is looking for this deep understanding of all the different things that contributed to a person landing in prison. It's not like they just sort of randomly land, but they have to be able to explain, here's how I got here. And the term that they focus on a lot is insight. Insight just really means a deep understanding of something. And in this case, they're focused on the crime that resulted in a life sentence. And in order to show that insight, they have to show that they understand all the factors from their background that led up to the crime. That includes things like family relationships and other crimes or things they may have committed. But an important thing to think about, if you're a family member, loved one, supporter of somebody going through this process, who's in prison and they have to face the parole board to come home. One of the main things you can give them is permission to tell the truth. And what I mean by that is to tell the truth about family dynamics, what was happening in the home, what kind of experiences they had in their childhood, adolescence, young adulthood, that may have contributed to some of their actions, some of their beliefs, that later on led to them committing some harm that brought them to prison. And the reason I say giving them permission to talk about that is so important is because most of us don't. Most of us keep that stuff in-house. You don't talk badly about your parents or your family, or you don't put your business in the street. All those things keep people in prison, because this process requires them to explore, to think about, to understand, to talk about some of those things so they can arrange their understanding of it into a story that makes sense. And the family members hold the key to that for sure. And that includes things like their lifestyle that the person was living at the time of the crime. It It includes the experiences they had, any kind of traumatic incidents, the death of a sibling, of a parent, another family member, or someone in the community. Things like alcohol and substance use, gang involvement. All of those things can did help contribute to a lot of people's conduct that landed them in prison on a life sentence. And the parole board is listening for how well the person understands how all those things showed up and contributed to their actions. And it's not just their actions leading up to the crime itself. It's also how did those circumstances show up in any other prior disciplinary record in prison, because the folks in the program, we have intentionally started the Home After Harm program in level 4 general population prison settings. That means that there are places that have, unfortunately, a lot of violence, a lot of gang activity, not a lot of positive supportive programs. And our program is there to change that, to really change the culture of these places. But because we know where we're going, we also know that people who are housed on these yards often have, extensive disciplinary records. Sometimes it's fairly recent. And we spend a lot of time helping them obviously change those patterns, but also be able to talk about what led to them committing some, rule violation, even violent ones, or even relatively minor ones in prison. All of that goes into this question of whether the person has insight into their own background, their own actions. And so the key is, if the parole board hears the person talk about these things from the background, they're then listening for, how have you resolved those issues, and what steps have you taken to make sure you prevent returning to those old patterns, those old behaviors that caused harm in the past. And so they're trying to find out, what do you do now? How do you cope with those situations, those stressors, those things that used to contribute to some misconduct or violence? What do you do now? And they want to hear that you are accountable for the harm that you've caused in the past, even before you came to prison, and including while you've been in prison. And they want to see that you have an understanding of the impact of your actions in the crime, or even in misconduct in prison, the impact it had on victims, the people who survived and the people whose lives were taken. They want to show that you understand the impact. And they want to hear you talk about your future, so that it paints a different picture of how you will be going forward. That includes where you're going to live, where you're going to work, how you're going to continue some of the programming that you've been doing, therapy you've been doing, counseling you've been involved in, how you'll continue that when you go home, and who your support system will be. And in many cases, that's you. The folks on this webinar are going to be helping to paint the picture for the parole board of what the person's life after prison might look like. And they can do all those things. And if they don't do the thing for this bottom bullet point, if they don't show that they can follow the rules and avoid rule violation reports, none of the rest of it will be enough to convince the parole board to release them. So they have to do all of those things. And this is one of the last things I'll talk about here, is what about those who are serving life without the possibility of parole sentences, or those who are serving really long determinate or fixed sentences? As I said, sometimes if you qualify for youth parole hearing because you were under 26 when you committed the crime, or an elderly parole hearing because you're 50 years old now and will have served at least 20 years, you get to go to the parole board. But some people don't meet those criteria, or they're serving a life without the possibility of parole sentence. And they may be seeking resentencing. There are a couple different new laws on the books that allow people to go back to court. The court can modify a sentence to resentence them to a shorter term. But when the court is making that decision, this is the same thing when the governor is looking at a case, deciding whether or not to issue a commutation so that someone serves a different and shorter sentence. They're looking at some of the same factors. They're trying to figure out, well, what's the person's disciplinary record? If they've been to the parole board already, what did the parole board say about them? Or if they've seen the psychologist, what is the psychologist saying about them? The kind of risk that they might present if they were released. Have they done the work in prison to understand why they caused harm in the past and set themselves up with powerful and supportive parole plans in the future? So the courts and the DA, when they're considering resentencing, are looking at those same factors. Now, I've done a really quick overview of the process. If you want to know more, as I'm sure you will, we hold what we call Lifer School, which tries to take even more of the mystery out of this process. It's a place where attorneys who represent people going to the parole board show up to try to get some guidance on how they can be more effective as advocates, and family members of loved ones who have to go through the process come to get their questions answered and get some more guidance in how they can support their loved one in the process. We'll be having the next Lifer School sometime in the spring, or maybe even before that, maybe late winter, maybe more like February. So stay tuned. We also have a lot of resources on our website to answer a lot of questions, provide examples, templates for how you can provide documentation to support your folks inside. And I look forward to you learning more about the Home After Harm program so you can partner with us in supporting your loved ones. And we'll see you at graduation.
Thank you, Keith, for that overview. In the chat, you will see that we have linked the resources from our website. We also want to tell everyone that they are available in Spanish for those who English might not be their first language. Now we'll head over to the overview of the Home After Harm program, and I'll pass it over to Warren.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Good evening, everybody. My name is Warren Hands. I'm the Supervising Parole Success Advocate for the Home After Harm program for Uncommon Law. And despite the parole board's emphasis on trauma and prison programming, it still remains limited, especially in some of the more remote institutions throughout the state. And a lot of the institutions, as some of you family members know, they are in remote locations. And particularly for those of your loved ones that are serving long sentences, Home After Harm addresses the gap by introducing a trauma-informed programming tailored for California parole preparation. The pilot programming aims to create therapeutic communities within the prison system where participants serving long sentences for serious and violent offenses can revisit their traumatic experiences, develop self-understanding, be accountable, and learn coping skills. This program is designed to assist participants in navigating the discretionary parole process. The curriculum is developed and led by individuals that have experienced the discretionary parole process themselves. I myself was one who was able to successfully navigate that discretionary parole process along with the 4 individuals who also facilitate the curriculum. One of the ones, Steve, will be coming up shortly after me, also navigated the parole process successfully. And in collaboration with the lawyers and experienced other professionals, they'll come in and help the individual participants, help guide them in what will be necessary for your loved ones to also be successful going forward. This is a very deep dive into what it takes to go back through some closed doors that we've shut along the way of life that we might not have wanted to deal with, some of the things that were very traumatic in the creation of how we got to the point to engage in some past behaviors that led us to become the person that we were that created some of these violent behaviors. And going backwards and going back through these doors are often difficult, but being able to be guided by some people that were successful in doing this is the only way home for a lot of these participants. And so I advise you as an advisement to myself and the other people that help through this process to help your loved ones. Stay with them, encourage them, because the process is difficult, but the process is worth it. And thank you for your time. And I'm going to pass it to Steve and AK to provide more details on the program's various aspects.
Thank you, Warren. My name's Steve Berenti, and I am a parole success advocate for the Home After Harm program for Salinas Valley State Prison. And it's an honor for me to be able to do this humbling work. So I actually get to, week after week, sit in circle in group with your loved ones and discuss various topics that Keith and Warren just touched on. And it's really humbling for me. And I say that because less than 1 year ago, I was in their seat. I was sitting in a prison classroom trying to figure out my way out of prison. And to be on the other side now, coming in and helping, giving those tools and helping instill that hope, not even a year later, it's just truly amazing and humbling. And one of the main aspects of getting out and getting myself prepared to be healthy enough to where I'm no longer a threat to society was having a community that was safe enough for me to be able to talk about my trauma, to be able to talk about some of the things that happened with me in the past, to really like do some deep self-discovery. And that's one of the first things that we do in the Home After Harm curriculum is we teach and help develop community. These men, there's over 20 of them that come into a group week after week, and they begin to form a bond of trust, honesty, accountability within each other. And it's just really amazing to see how men from different races, different backgrounds, different cultures, different age groups can say we have one common goal, and that's to get home to our loved ones and get out of prison. And that common goal binds these men. And we talk about creating a therapeutic community, what it looks like to have like a freedom culture, a freedom mindset. And it's things that the men have inside them, and we just help them process that out. One of the things that we do look at as well is the trauma. We are a trauma-informed care. We definitely go into some of the darkest places in their lives. And that safe container that we create in that room is essential for that type of work. And we do this because the parole board, they want to see that you know why you committed your crime. When I went in there, they asked me, why did you do what you did? And if I hadn't dug and healed from the traumas of my past, I would have no idea how to discuss and even realize or acknowledge why I committed the harm that I did to other folks. So it's essential that we do our own work. And these men, they work hard, digging into their trauma, looking into their backgrounds, understanding what it's done to their brain, and really like looking at shame and guilt. Because when you are in that parole room, usually you're talking about the worst day of your life. You're being questioned, oftentimes rapid fire by two different commissioners with a DA and survivors and victims in the room about the worst day of your life. And so many strong emotions could come up. And that's another aspect of the Home After Harm program is emotional intelligence. We teach the men how to identify their emotions, how to regulate their emotions in the moment. And really, it gives them an opportunity to tell their life story. We go through a process of timelines in the Home After Harm program. And that's from the youngest and earliest memory they have all the way up to however old they are today, and looking at not just the trauma, but the different experiences, what home life was like, anything that could have contributed to the person that they had become and the person that they have become today. And we really look at that and try to create a gap through their narrative of who they were and who they are today, and like have that Grand Canyon in between showing I'm no longer that person that I was then. And being able to tell their narrative is imperative to show what the big mystery of BPH is. BPH looks for insight, check, we take care of that. Accountability, check, we take care of that. The harm impact, how did my crime impact others? Check, we take care of that. And also remorse. Remorse is a big thing, check. We go through all these different aspects that the BPH is specifically listening for in a 2 to 4 hour hearing. And we go over these in depth week after week. And then finally, once we've gone through the story, all the insight, remorse, then we look at, okay, how can we ensure the board? How can we ensure these people that we're never going to do it again? How can I talk about my life of crime and tell them, ensure them in that moment, I'm never going to do this again? And that comes through what I like to call the plans to succeed for the future. And that includes like relapse prevention plans. So if they use drugs and their crime had anything to do with drugs, how are we going to ensure that we're no longer going to go and use drugs when times get tough? If your case was around crime and gangs, how are we going to ensure them that we're no longer going to be criminal mindset and get involved with the gangs when we get out? So all these relapse prevention plans we formulate that involve triggers and coping skills, high risk situations. And then we look at parole plans, and this is a really loaded document, really a loaded piece of information for the board, because they want to know, if I were to open up the gates and let you out today, how do I know that you're going to succeed? Like, how do we know that you're just not going to fall flat on your face and resort back to crime? And so this includes job offers, this includes housing, this includes like emotional health, financial help, and this is really where the families come in, where y'all come in, because you guys are their support system. Most of y'all are the reason that they're in that room. They've talked about their North Star, and most of y'all are their North Star, are that reason, that one thing that they hold on to when all else fails. They say, I'm going to hold strong because I love my mom, because I love my daughter, I love my son. And so these parole plans are going to include you in them. And then that's really when we get into the support letters. And I know we're going to talk a little bit later about how y'all can write these support letters that are going to help them show that, hey, I'm not just getting out by myself. I have people who care about me, who are willing to occupy a space for me. They have a vehicle for me. They have a job waiting for me. They have a certain amount of financial needs waiting for me. And so I'm not just out there on my own trying to figure things out. And finally, we go through a process of a closing statement, which really is another opportunity for us to show that we have remorse, to show that we have changed, and to show that we are indeed no longer a threat to society, and we're ready to come out and be productive members of society. And this is what's amazing about this program that sets us apart from every other program is, one, it takes all these programs that the prisons offer that I had to take. I had to take like 10 different classes to gain the insight and knowledge to get found suitable. And I had to go twice. They're all in one curriculum. They're all in one home after harm curriculum. So 20 lessons covers like the 10 different classes I had to take over, 22 years. So it's really an amazing program. And again, I'm humbled and just so blessed to be able to work with your loved ones, because this is, again, less than a year ago, I was sitting in those seats, and eternally grateful. So I want to pass it to AK. He's going to give you a little insight on the legal aspect of it.
Sorry, we're gonna just a brief.
Hey, so sorry. There was some technical difficulties on my side. I was just introducing myself. My name is Alex Kirkpatrick. I'm an attorney here in the Lancaster team of Home After Harm. I just want to say thank you so much, Steve, for that just really impassioned, deep introduction, and Warren into Home After Harm, which is such a, again, feel so honored to be here tonight talking to really the loved ones that are supporting people through the really long journey home. And also humbled and honored to be working with such a team that can and your loved ones inside, right? So yeah, just feel really privileged to be here. So thank you all for coming. Yeah, and here are the legal side of our dear team here. So at Lancaster, I'm working with Chris, which is our legal assistant, who's really like organizing a lot of the logistical support and support through the legal side. Same with Justin and Becca. At SVSP, we have Jasmine and we have Emma, and Paulina on our team is really coordinating the pieces overall about how our program is even running institutionally. And so that is our team. Becca is supervising both the SVSP and the Lancaster and is doing this work. So as Steve said, right, we're in this this long journey of home after harm, right? So it's about 9-10 months of really intensive work. You know, there's those weekly trauma-informed counseling sessions, right, with group sessions, and so those are weekly sessions, right? And if you can imagine 9 or 10 months, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, holding very vulnerable and sensitive information. And so as Keith was describing in the beginning, if this process, right, is describing the larger journey and story of how somebody came into their own, you know, life and selfhood and really grappling with all of the different pieces of their life, then you're facing this other process, this legal process, the board. And so our program is really unique because we're having this trauma-informed counseling piece that Steve was talking about. And then we're also offering the legal support, basically how to navigate the process of going to board. So just, you know, very briefly, we do not offer, like, we are not actually representing your loved ones in home after harm directly the day of the hearing. We're not their attorneys that are in the room the day of the hearing. But we are still representing them in this other capacity, preparing them for that process. The hope is, right, by giving them all the tools at this point, that they're going to be prepared, that they themselves, regardless of their attorney that day, are going to be prepared, both, you know, emotionally, and also have the tools in order to know how to navigate that process. So that legal process doesn't just begin the day of, it begins many, many, many years before even their first initial hearing. And so this is how we provide that support. We do legal workshops once a month for, and this is at both Lancaster and SVSP. We do a legal workshop once a month. And so those are topics of just, you know, general parole process 101. It's going through the whole process. We talk about what the actual day of the hearing looks like. And then we start to get into the nitty-gritty of, like, how are you actually articulating your story, and how is that going to have implications into the legal process of the board, right? And at that point, what are the other components that you need, that Steve was alluding to, right? Of, like, that you need to prepare and to provide to the board to show that you're ready to go home. And then we do, you know, some mock hearing preparation too, right? So that's actually practicing mock questions, pretending to be the commissioners that are in that room. And just to sum this piece up, it's, you know, the day of the hearing, right? You have your loved one that's there. You have the two commissioners that are making this decision. One's a deputy commissioner and one's a commissioner. And then you have your loved one's attorney. And then the district attorney or prosecutor for that county could be present. And so that's why this is, you know, a legal proceeding and a legal process. And that's why we're providing all these tools so, you know, your loved one can really be ready. And to be ready for that day, every case is different, right? There's no general, you know, there's general information, but every case is different. And so that's the reason why we do individual case review and legal visits. So every single participant gets, at a minimum, a single one-on-one legal visit with our attorney. So that would be me at Lancaster, Becca at Lancaster, or Emma up at SVSP. And that's with our team as well. So, Chris and Justin and Becca and as a team are also here supporting that legal visit. Again, we also review their case. So if your loved one has had a hearing before, we review their transcripts. We review other pieces of information if they haven't had a hearing in order to prepare them to be their best self and be in the best shoes that they can that day. And at the end of the program, right, we provide what is called a roadmap, right, which is acknowledging all of the pieces of work that they've put together, both the emotional components, both their preparation and getting the documents ready and other pieces for their hearing, and where how this deep journey that we're all, on together, right, and supporting your loved one on is kind of culminating at the very end. And so we kind of chart out where they are and also leave them with some advice on how to continue growing themselves. So that's the legal aspect. Again, so honored and privileged to do the work here at Home After Harm with our team, with your loved ones, and just this special community that we're building. And I'm going to pass it back to Jasmine.
Thank you, AK, Steve, and Warren, for sharing a little bit about what our program is and what our participants go through weekly and just like our resources. Continuing, we're going to go into the section where we can talk about how you can support your loved one through the parole process and the Home After Harm program. As we mentioned, this has been a new development, and one of the things that really inspired us was listening to our past participants share their experiences and meeting some of their family members at the graduation. Like, we saw how crucial the role you play and the incredible support and on their journey home. And we understand how important the support is. And we want to offer additional ways to assist your loved ones as they engage in the Home After Harm program and navigate the parole process. And to guide this conversation, we'll start by directly hearing from some of our peer mentors about how their families have supported them through the program and through the parole process. I feel like their stories can provide valuable insights and inspiration for how you can continue to make a positive impact. And we'll begin with Angel Garcia and Crystal Tovar. Angel is a peer mentor at Salinas Valley.
A lot of others like me that were very nervous, not wanting to speak, public speaking, not wanting to share, our emotions and what we've gone through, that we later learned that was a very common thing. Family support has come in the sense of love and encouragement. Love and encouragement in the process. I was fortunate enough to have, my sister, Crystal, and my wife, Maria, in the classes that my sister comes on Friday to come to visit me. And that's the same day as class, and the hours would conflict. And so she would leave early. She would tell me, no, you're going to go to your class. You need this. It's important. Go. I'm going to go home. It's fine. I'll see you next week. And she would make me go to class. And it was, I loved her for that. And I think she as well realized how important this was for me. Stood out for me is when we had to do our timeline, which is, from our earliest experiences of trauma, our memories from trauma, all the way to adulthood and to our committing offenses. I wrote one. I remember another with my wife, having a conversation with her about, living this lifestyle, the gang and criminal lifestyle, and expressing to her how I was tired and fed up of it, but I didn't know how to transition. I didn't know how to change and better myself. And, just she was very encouraging and telling me, it's okay. You're a smart guy. You know what to do. And you know what? Instead of judging me and being like, oh, you're just being weak or anything like that, she was like, no, I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud of you, and I know you can take steps. I know you're giving the tools and the information, and you're able to do this. And just a little nudge from our families, being involved, inquiring, ask questions of where we're at and what we're doing, even though we're in prison. That for me was tremendous. So really, parole preparation is me sitting back and just checking, am I ready? How can I live better? And then start sharing prison, making the daily decisions that I make when I go out, being polite to people. The way I speak, the insight that I have, the confidence. I think that's what made them ask more questions and feel that this program was so important. You know, because my sister-in-law is like, wow, you speak differently, you're acting differently, and they're like, that's why they were so, they came to the graduation and they were just, they loved it. They loved it because they seen what the impact it had on me. That's one thing we walked away at graduation. We said, you know what, this is possible. We didn't think that we would be able to make parole, and now we feel that we can.
That when Angel started doing this program, first of all, I didn't even know that it had to do with parole or anything, because he would just say, Sissy, I'm in a class and it's really long. It's about 9 or 10 months. And I was like, oh, okay. But, throughout the months, he was opening up to me and he was explaining to me that this program is for individuals that have been incarcerated for a long time and that didn't have an out date, but it helps them get closer to try to parole. I would give them a lot of encouragement, just tell him to do good. And even if he had to open up and be vulnerable and share his story, he had to do it because this is part of the process to be able to go home. I go visit him. That's important to me because there was a time when I couldn't go see him because he was so far. So now that he's here close by, I take advantage of it and I go. The hardest challenge aside from that was when our mother passed away. And so, I know for Angel, it was really hard because he was not able to go to her funeral. I am really grateful that even though we were able to communicate through phone calls, we were still able to cope with my mom's loss and like get through that process. I had so much emotions when I seen my brother graduate, because like I had mentioned before, my brother didn't have an out date. This program has helped them get closer to parole. And I don't have words to put into my feelings. I can't express the joy that I feel. Actually, I feel a lot of gratitude. I feel a lot of gratitude towards the people who created this program for families like me. And I'm grateful that he stepped by it because there was times when he was like, I don't know, sister, this program's long. And I told him, well, it doesn't matter. You're going to do it anyways. And we weren't used to parole date in a few years. We were used to not having a parole date. But I'm excited. We have a lot of plans. We have a lot of things that we want to accomplish in life. We want to travel to try and speak to families of incarcerated individuals and share our experiences with them so that way they know that maybe they were in our situation to where they felt like because of this program and many opportunities that we've had, we're able to say, hey, like this is somebody that was in this situation. It gets better. So we want to bring hope and just raise awareness for it. And I always let them know that regardless of what happens in life circumstances, like I'm always going to be there for him.
I just want to give a great gratitude and thanks to Angel and Crystal and Eric and Angelina for being so vulnerable and sharing their journeys. I know it's just such a privilege to hear them, and I'm really grateful that they opened up for this webinar and to help all of us in learning more about how to support our loved ones. Now we're going to hear from Eric, who is a Home After Harm peer mentor at Lancaster.
My experience with Home After Harm was amazing. Not only was it was extremely informational, but it covered every aspect of the parole process. But the environment they created, like even on a level 4 yard, it was that of a loving, supportive community willing to help when they're going to succeed. It was like a family. And I felt like by the time I completed the program, not only did I receive my parole readiness and guidance from actual parole board attorneys, but I felt like I gained a family who genuinely wanted to see me make it home, To me, family support was a big part of my journey of rehabilitation. And it was motivating. It was kind of like pushing my desire to want to do better for myself. supported me throughout the process, encouraged me to do better, and having to hold me accountable if I messed up. Man, that was like a guiding light for me. But, it was kind of like what home at the Horn teaches you about having a North Star, something that could guide you in the right direction. But that's what counts for me. Absolutely. One thing about, being incarcerated, it's a lot of negative emotions, like sadness, loneliness, any frustration. But with the support of my family through my time, I've been able to cope and remain strong. For example, like when my mother passed away, my family stepped up and let me know that they were there for me. And that meant a lot to me. But like having my family support throughout the program, it just encouraged me to just, want to be the best that I could be. If I could give families in the program any advice, it would be to go through the program and the curriculum with their loved ones so that they themselves can have a thorough knowledge of the parole process and be able to help their loved ones to prepare for board. Because, in the program, we need all the help that we can get. I feel like my wife and her level of support with me throughout the program has been her willingness to listen to me. And not only listen to me, but encourage me to do better for myself. Offer me the opportunity to be able to share what I've been learning, and ask me questions. And I feel like her curiosity motivated me to want to learn more if I could tell her more. And I feel like my wife, like being my North Star, wanted to make it home to her, it encouraged me to do. One of the things I feel like that stood out to me is when my wife spoke at the graduation, when I finally graduated the program. It just let me know that I was loved, I had support, and that I could do it. It was motivating for me. Just let me know that I was going in the right path. I pretty much did. My wife has been so much of a big motivator for me throughout my whole incarceration. Being there for me, let me know I've been loved, encouraged me to do good, holding me accountable when I do wrong and I mess up as well.
Being extremely excited for the opportunity to be a part of Home After Harm. I know at the time he loved being around the other individuals with the same goal in mind, which was freedom. And with like-minded individuals, he felt a sense of safety and support from the group. Supported my husband by just being present. I have been a consistent positive force in his life through thick and thin. Also, as his wife, I give him a sense of accountability by keeping him focused on what is important and not getting distracted with the foolishness that happens around him in that day-to-day. When I saw him graduate, I felt extremely proud. I felt proud as a wife, seeing her husband accomplish something he cared so much for and worked so hard to complete. I got to see how he holds himself when he speaks to a room of his peers. Felt truly blessed to be able to witness some of his greatness. I always knew he possessed, but to witness it in person was amazing. And to do so with Home After Harm, after everything I know that they have accomplished and your guys' goals and your purpose, it's amazing. And to also be filled and surrounded with other men who are taking that journey and who have taken that journey to freedom. Oh, I feel joy, elated, relief, validation. I want to say most of all validation because of the challenges I faced defending my husband's honor and my choice in loving him completely regardless of his current situation. For people to know that this journey was long and it wasn't easy. It was a conscious effort on both of our parts in different ways, of course, and dealing with being incarcerated and feeling as if he was holding me back because I am a free individual. And my husband, we were a team. We built a strong foundation of trust, friendship, love, and respect amongst each other. And that is what kept us going and kept us focused on knowing that it is possible. If everyone else around him was getting great news and it was happening for others, so why not him? And once was a wish or a prayer became a goal and is now a reality. I mean, how fantastic is that? I I will be there for him again when he's released, and I will be picking him up, and I will be taking him home.
Oh man, what an incredible story. It's always a privilege and honor just to hear the experience of family members, loved ones share their experience. My name is Chris. I'm a legal assistant at Lancaster State Prison, and I just want to echo what Jasmine was saying. Like, we here at Uncommon want to give a special shout out to Angel, Crystal, Eric, and Angelia just for providing, just sharing your experience and your willingness to do those interviews. Thank you so much. Um, so we talk about emotional support, right? Like, how do we support our loved ones? Like, how do families support their loved ones who are incarcerated? And how do the incarcerated family members support their loved ones? So, this program, we do a lot of we explore into like deep, dark things that folks have committed that could cause these negative emotions, like Keith and Steve and Warren were sharing, AK. It's like these hard conversations that maybe sometimes we never even had before. And in our program, we're discovering, and some folks, they don't go through this. And it can cause a lot of sadness, guilt, shame, and anger. So as a family member or a loved one, how you can support them through this process is just checking in on them, asking them, asking them how are they doing. And like Crystal and Angelia was sharing, like ask questions, like Angel was sharing as well, like ask questions, be involved, be intentional, and understand and get involved with the discussion. But also sometimes, as human beings, we need to process things and we need a space. And one of the things that you can support your loved ones emotionally is just letting them, holding that space for them so that they can vent their emotions because it's difficult. There's a lot of challenges. As you heard, like Eric and Angelia, Eric, our peer mentor, he was LWAP. And even Angel expressed that there was a point in his life that he thought he was never going to go home. And these are very challenging and difficult times. But at the end, they support each other, and they both have the opportunity to go home, to see the parole board, and reunite with their family. Eric Perry, like, I just want to commend, and we would like to commend Eric Perry and Angel because they are peer mentors. Like, one thing about unique about our program is our parole success advocate, like Steve was sharing, that have been in their shoes, have been incarcerated. Warren, Kareem, Adrian, Jonathan, they have all been there. They understand the process, but now they're choosing to come back into the institution to support your loved ones. And that's just amazing. But we would like to commend not only Eric and Angel, because yes, our PSA are coming weekly, but our peer mentors are still on the yard. They're on the yard doing day in and day out with your family members. And they're the ones that are encouraging them, that are supporting them. And as our part, we try to do our best and we encourage family members to do the same. It's just give them space and reassure them. Sometimes it's going to be hard. And like Crystal was sharing, like, it was difficult traveling far. Her brother was in a different institution. And sometimes the participant, the your loved ones, they like Angel was sharing, like there was moments that he didn't want to be part of the program, but Crystal reassured him and encouraged him to continue with the program because it's for the better. So, slide. So as you heard earlier, Steve was sharing like the North Star. We had many conversations from previous graduates to current participants. And we always ask the question, what's your North Star? What is your North Star? What motivates you? What encourages you to do what's right and to make it back home? Not only being internally free, the freedom coach, but being physically free. What motivates them? And a lot of them, they say it's you, the family, their wives, their loved ones. That's their North Star. And I hope y'all here tonight on this webinar understand that your loved ones in there are constantly thinking about you and they're working hard. One of the biggest fears that many of them have expressed is that disappointing their family members, disappointing their loved ones, going to the parole board and being denied and having to make that phone call of saying, I got denied. And that's one of the toughest things that a person inside, because I've heard many people have expressed that I can do the time, but it's my family. I'm worried about my family. So I just want to share that to let you know that your loved ones do love you. They consider y'all, their North Star. And by understanding what we're doing here, just encouraging them, just be more involved, holding them accountable. If you know they're doing something wrong, please don't enable them, but hold them accountable. Because as Keith was saying, one thing about the parole board, they are really hard on rule violations. So we need to hold our loved ones accountable, but also providing words of encouragement. Just, it's hard for both sides. We understand, we totally get it, that out there, everybody has responsibility. There's challenges, there's sadness, there's hurt, there's pain, there's anger, there's so many emotions. And sometimes we need to breathe, but also it's nice to have some type of words of encouragement. And one thing I would like to say is we're here with the Home After Harm. That's our goal. Our goal is to build community. We're here to build community. We're here tonight to explain, just be involved and just share what the process is in and how we can support them. Because our goal is to see your family and loved one come home just as much as you. So with that, thank you. I'm gonna pass it over to Jasmine.
Thank you, Chris. Before I present, I want to remind everyone to add any questions you have to the chat. We are going to designate some time afterwards to answer any questions. So I really encourage you to put any questions you have down in the chat. And so one of the things that the board looks for in determining if someone is suitable for parole is their plans for safely returning to the community. This is one of the areas your incredible support can actually come into play in their hearings. So we've already kind of heard about it a little bit during the webinar, but we're going to talk a little bit more about letters of support and parole plans and how you can help your loved ones with them. So what is a letter of support? A letter of support is a letter from a community member or a family member that shows the board that your loved one has a strong support system and if granted parole will have continued support while safely transitioning back to the community. We do want to say that a letter of support is not an opportunity to criticize the board or tell it what to do. They will not receive that very well. And so we encourage people to not write about that and keep it focused on how you will support your loved one as they come home. Next slide. So there are two types of support letters. There are parole plans, which is a letter that outlines a specific offer of assistance that you can give your loved one. This can be housing, residence. You can say, I can provide my loved one a room. This is where I live, or employment or transportation. Like I can take my loved one to their job and back, or counseling or mentorship. There's general support letters, which is just a general letter of support that offers general support, including emotional and spiritual support or connection to necessary service or resources in the community. As you've heard, emotional support is very important and it's very overwhelming re-entering. And so having these communities and these support systems is very important and gives the board more confidence that people will not relapse into harmful behaviors and return to prison. Next slide, please. So what do you want to include in your letters of support? So you will want to put that board's address and put a formal salutation. You want to put your complete contact information, which would include your phone number, address, and email if you have one. And then your relationship to the person you're writing in support of. So if it's your brother, you'll say, this is my brother. If it's your partner, you'll say it's your partner. And then the specific support that you will offer, and be as specific as possible. And and then what not to include. This is something we encourage people not to include in their letters of support, as they are not helpful and could harm your loved one during their hearing. So any statements suggesting that the crime was not serious or it was a mistake, any statements suggesting that your loved one has behaved perfectly, especially when you know they haven't and they've had recent write-ups, statements suggesting or directing the board how to do their job and what the grant should be, what the result should be. Next. So just to ground this advice, here are some examples. So a helpful letter of support would say something like, I have known my loved one since 2014 when we met at X, Y, and Z. During the time that we have known each other, I have observed, you can talk about their growth and all the programming they've done. Our relationship has impacted me by helping me too. And you can also talk about how your loved one has helped you grow in your relationship or in general, and just talk about it in great detail. Another example is, I am prepared to offer my community member employment at, and then you could add the details of where they will be working, the address, how much you'll be making an hour, and his employment will be full-time and he will receive on-the-job training. Something that is less helpful is, you must grant my loved one parole because they have already served more than enough time for this mistake they have made, and he doesn't deserve how he's been treated while incarcerated. This is what we said. We don't want to tell the board how to do their job, or that they are doing it wrong, or that the crime was a mistake. And then another example is, my loved one has a perfect record while they've been incarcerated. You don't want to do this, especially if you know they have had recent 115s. Next slide. So where do you send your letter? You can send it to the board at the address shown in the screen. You can also send it to your loved one to submit it through their counselor, or if your loved one has an attorney and you know their contact information, you can send it to them and ask them to submit it to the board. So the deadline, or just kind of a general timeline that we recommend, is to submit it 6 months to 1 year prior to their hearing. And if your loved one has had multiple hearings, we recommend that you update each letter in advance of each hearing to show the board that the support and offer still stands. And the other way that you all can help your loved ones is through parole plans. So what is a parole plan? A parole plan is a detailed plan that your loved one will present to the board that shows that they have reflected on and thought about their life after they're released from prison. A parole plan should be realistic and concrete to show that your loved one has plans to re-enter the community in a safe and supportive way. A parole plan is different from a relapse prevention plan, which is another writing that they submit to the board that shows that your loved one has a plan in place to prevent relapse into past negative behaviors. If you want to know more about relapse prevention plans, we also have a resource on our website that explains more in detail what they are and how your family member can write one. And then just suggested topics and structure. So you would want your loved one to have a timeline of their needs and goals. So for example, in month 1, I'm going to go and get my ID. I'm going to make sure that I report to my PO. I'm going to make sure that I know how to use public transportation to get to my job, and month 2 and 3 and so forth. And then job offers, support letters, or research explaining how they will support themselves financially. You'll want to add that to the parole plan. You'll also want to add housing plans. So whether that a family member is going to provide housing, or your loved one is going to be at a transitional housing, you will want to submit acceptance letters to the board and include it into your parole plans. You will want to also create like a viable document, a document that says like how they're going to get to one place or another. plans for accessing services and programming that is responsive to their needs and history. This can include NA or AA or therapy or other support that they need to prevent relapsing into those harmful behaviors that we were talking about earlier. And then a list of their community and support network. So they can list you guys or family members or sponsors, community members, employers, and anyone who will help them succeed in their reentry. And lastly, we already mentioned this, at the end of our cohort, we will be having a graduation where we celebrate our participants' accomplishments. As you've heard, they do a lot of tough work and they've grown so much, and it's a time to celebrate them and give them their flowers. And we are expecting this cohort's graduation to be around May or June 2025. We would really, really love for all of you to be there. So please make sure your visiting forms are filled out and updated to join us at the celebration. We will be sending out more communication about the dates the closer we get to the graduation, but I really hope to see all of you there. And this is a way that you can help us by making sure your forms are updated and submitted. And so now I am going to continue on to the Q&A. And let me just check the chat. I don't see any questions, but a question that I have to the PSAs or the attorney is, like, we talked a little bit about how to help and support our loved ones through the home after harm parole process, but how would you, what advice would you give to people to help loved ones after a hearing, after a denial or grant? Like, what would you recommend people to do? And I will pass it to Warren.
What I would advise them to do is just keep them upbeat, keep them positive. You know, it's as somebody who went through 2 denials, it's easy to get down and in a funk and think that everything is against you and it might not happen. What I would suggest is just to let them know and just stay positive. It's gonna happen. It didn't happen this time. Go back into the transcripts. Oftentimes within the denial, the commissioners tell you what they expect you to do and what you're not doing, and help them go through the transcripts, review them with them, and say, okay, because the family members can get a copy of the transcripts as well. Review the transcripts with them and see, okay, what were the instructions that the commissioners are given, and say, okay, this is what they expect you to do. Remain disciplinary free. Take these groups. Are these groups available? If not, let's find a book report that addresses some of these concerns that the commissioners have, and do the book reports. Send them to the BPH when you're done. Do a book report on it. This is the book report. This is what I learned from the book report. This is what addresses some of the concerns that the commissioners have. There's always ways to be proactive to address what the commissioners are asking. What they don't want to see you do is say, you know what, that group is not here, so I can't do it. No, stop that. Don't let that be an impediment. Step around it. Be a problem solver. If that program is not there, if they want you to do CGA and CGA is not there, write a correspondence course. There's prep. There's Right Grip, Right Us. We have resources available to correspondence courses. There's opportunities to work around it. You just have to learn how to be proactive. Don't take the no, it's just not right now. And I think that's the best gauge. And be ready for the next time, because it is difficult, but you can get around it.
Thank you, Warren. Thank you for that insight. Juanita, I see your comment. We haven't heard that, but we will look into it to make sure that we communicate with family members as needed. We do have a question from GM, which would be, what would you recommend for us to do to keep our loved ones at ease and make sure they are doing their part, even in tough times? I'm going to pass it to Steve.
Thank you, Jasmine. So really to encourage them and remind them how important they are. I know being inside, even though I could call mom and I could call my brothers and my girlfriend anytime, and they would always answer the phone. Um, so in reality, I was never alone. But being inside, it's really easy to think like I'm in this all alone. Um, Nobody really understands me, and so sometimes just having that ear to be able to listen and hear and to ask, don't be afraid to ask like real like questions like how are you really feeling. Don't let them off the hook with the oh, I'm doing good, I'm all right, or things are cool. Say no, I really want to know like where's your heart at, and to be very interested in what it is that they're going through, because there's a lot going on. There's usually a lot more going on than we want to share. However, knowing how interested that you are in our lives, um, beyond just the I'm answering the phone, I'm sending you a package, I come to visit you, but that you really care about my heart, um, it goes a long way. And it's simple things like really just asking, how are you really doing right now, and listening to that. I think through the tough times, there's just not enough of people around within the prison system to be able to carry that burden. And I know it's a lot for our loved ones. And so I encourage y'all out there to make sure you have that person that you could go to and say, hey, I'm helping to carry this burden of my loved one who's incarcerated and going through a tough time, and it's heavy on me. And so to make sure that you're taking care of yourself as well. But yeah, just making sure like that consistency and really giving those deep diving questions of how are you really doing. I know that was instrumental for me, because I always wanted to talk about it even though I wasn't willing to. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I actually was talking about so you mentioned that they don't want to share because we don't want y'all to worry, and that is so true. I was actually talking to my coworker about this today. There were so many things that I held back from my family members because I didn't want to bring them into prison. And I think if you as loved ones can share with them and say, "Hey, I want to give you permission to tell me about your stressful day. I want to give you permission to tell me like what is something that's really bothering you right now? What is something horrible that you just experienced? What is going on?" And on the other side, hey, tell me about something good that's going on. Share with me the A you just got in your GED class, or the great workout you just got out on the yard. Give them permission to share with you, because you're right. We get so caught up in not wanting you all to worry about us, that we do like mind reading, and we say, okay, well, they don't want to hear about it because then they're just going to stress out. When in reality, I know sometimes that's really what you all want, is to be able to support us. And you can only support if you know where the support is needed. So I would say give them permission. Be very proactive and say, hey, I want to give you permission right now to share your day with me, share your victories and your losses with me.
Yeah, great point, Steve. It's so true. And I'd just like to add and echo what Steve was sharing. It's like, tough times, there was a moment in time where there was like no hope, like no lifer was going home. There's no chances. It's like people felt super hopeless. And what I would add is just like maybe just offering them some type of hope, and just understanding that as we continue to do the right thing, we're going to receive the good results or positive results. And there's so many stories. As Steve just came home last year, and there's so many other folks, and maybe just point to that, right? Those are the folks who have made it back into society, who has got resentenced. If your loved one is LWOP, we have our peer mentor, Eric Perry. He's no longer LWOP. He's going to be able to see the parole board in a few years. So these stories, these real life people are actually receiving. So I would say just encouragement and just hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris and Steve. If you have any more questions, we invite you to call to our office or email us at info@uncommonlaw.org. Yeah, I just want to acknowledge GM, like we are so happy to have you all here, and we are here to support. And that's one of the biggest reasons why we were doing this, to connect with our participants, family members at the beginning, so that we can have this space to give advice, but also process and help engage the community more. Yeah, and so as we mentioned, if you would like an in-depth or more information about the parole process and how you can support your loved one, please come to Lifer School. It's going to be in February, I think, or early in the next year. And then if you would like more resources on support letters, parole plans, or other topics, please visit our website. We are going to link it in the chat one more time for you all to access it. We also want to, can I have the next slide, please? So we want to also invite you all to come to Uncommon Heroes to celebrate people's return to the community from prison, and the people who have supported their return. It will be Saturday, October 19th at 1 p.m. in Oakland. If you would like to register, please see the link in the chat. We hope you guys all come, and it is free for those who have loved ones who are incarcerated. So we really, really encourage you all to come and celebrate people who are coming home, and soon your loved ones will be there and be celebrated as well. In addition, we would also love if you all could take a survey after the webinar is over. It has just been linked on the chat. It will help us with in future webinars and how we can grow and share more information. Once again, I want to thank everyone who came tonight, and I want to thank Angel, Crystal, Perry, Eric, and Angelina for being very vulnerable and sharing their stories today, and all of you for showing up and coming to our webinar, and our team, the Home After Harm team, who also presented and gave very valuable information. Yeah, so I hope everyone has a great night, and please don't hesitate to reach out to us.